First of all, I want to welcome our guest who is here. I see Ann Hooper's back. She's a new grandma from Florida. Hi, Ann. There was a woman I spoke to yesterday named Kimberly, who's a principal from just outside of Washington, PA. Kimberly, good to see you. I have to say hello to one of our fellow Catholic school educators. Kimberly's here because your daughter's playing volleyball. Did they win? They're in the gold bracket. Okay, well, good to have you all. Wonderful. That gentleman over there is principal at St. Joe Catholic High School, and he's from Wheeling, West Virginia. So check him out after Mass. RCIA, very grateful to have you here, all of you. Thank you. All four of the Gospels contain a passion account. And as I've shared with you in the past, each Gospel writer adds their own little twist and things in order to flesh out, if you will, the message they're trying to communicate to us. And Luke is certainly no exception. In fact, Luke has been called the Gospel of the Outcast. And the reason that is so is that Luke, more than all the other Gospels combined, will show how those who are considered the dregs of society, the trash of society, actually will experience a reversal and become favored in God's eyes. For instance, you look at chapter 10 of Luke's Gospel, the famous story of the Good Samaritan. You remember a young lawyer comes up to Jesus and asks the question, "Who is my neighbor?" Rather than giving him a direct answer, Jesus paints a powerful picture using a story. And at the bottom line of the story, one who is considered an outcast, one who is considered despicable by the Jews of the day, ends up being the one who acted in a Christ-like fashion to a Jewish boy who fell ill among robbers. Shocking. And then we heard in a couple of weeks ago from Luke chapter 15, that famous story of the prodigal son. You remember how that young son, who wished his father dead, blew the family estate, shamed the father and the family, comes back home with a half-baked speech simply because he's hungry, only to have the father run after him because he is so thankful to have him back. And then in Luke chapter 18, the story of the Pharisee and the tax collector. Once again, a story found only in St. Luke. Jesus says, once upon a time, a Pharisee, a very religious man, one who's looked up in society as a holy man, goes to the temple precincts to pray. He goes to the front part. He does not bow his head, but he begins telling God how many wonderful things he has done, how much money he's given to the poor, how he pays tithes above what the law calls him to do. But then Jesus said there was this tax collector, this outcast sinner who doesn't even dare to enter the temple precincts, but stands in the back with head bowed and beats his breast and simply says, "Lord, have mercy on me, a sinner." Jesus says, which one do you think left the temple that day justified, right with God? And we know the answer. And then a cute little story in Luke chapter 19, the story about Zacchaeus, the chief tax collector. Big problem for such a big man because he was feared in society. He was very powerful, very wealthy for sure, but he was also known to be a notorious traitor and rip-off artist. But people feared and respected him at the same time. He had a problem. He was short. He heard Jesus was coming to town, and crowds were surrounding Jesus. Zacchaeus knew he had only one chance at getting to see Jesus, and that was to climb a sycamore tree, and he does. And of all the people Jesus could have spoken to that day, he talked to one, little Zacchaeus up in the tree. And he said to Zacchaeus, "Today salvation has come to your house." And then we have our story today. If you're a logical thinker, it makes no sense. If you follow every rule known to the Lord in the commandments and the gospel, it certainly will not seem fair nor right. The story of the two criminals hanging in crucifixion with Jesus. We hear about them in 3 different places in addition to Luke. In John 19:18, Matthew 27:38, and in Mark chapter 15, verses 27 and 28, where they are called robbers rather than criminals. But in Luke's gospel, and only in Luke, do we have a dialogue of these 2 criminals with Jesus. There they are, and at one point we call him the bad criminal. He looks over to Jesus and he scoffs at Jesus, and he says, hey, if you're the big deal Messiah, save yourself and save us as well. Only to be rebuked by the other criminal, whom we call the good criminal. In fact, he's known as in history as Dismas, a Greek name which means sunset. He looks at the bad criminal and says to him, you know, pal, stop it. We deserve what we're getting. We did this. We earned this penalty of death. This man is innocent. He has done nothing. And then one of the most beautiful exchanges found in the entire New Testament. He looks to Jesus and simply says to him, Lord Jesus, remember me when you enter your kingdom. Jesus looks at him and says, today you will be with me in paradise. And the Lord takes him home. What are we to make of this story? First of all, the incredible mercy and generosity of the Lord. The Lord is absolutely beyond our wildest imaginings in terms of his generosity. He gives everything and the best always to us. But secondly, lurking in Luke's mind as he composes this story about the good criminal are the words of Psalm 51, where it is written, a humbled, contrite heart, O Lord, you will never spurn. And what can we say about this criminal? Well, he's like that proverbial football player that comes sliding into the goal line, the 4th quarter, with just a few seconds left on the clock. There's not much time left. He can only talk about the innocence of Jesus, and he actually gives the first sermon in the New Testament. But then he could never earn salvation, you see. There was no time on the cross to do good works. He simply begs for the Lord's mercy, and he receives it. So what can we say about this good criminal? It ain't fair, is it? It just doesn't seem right. But that's how the Lord works. The words of Isaiah 55, beginning at verse 8, are so important to keep in mind. When God says through the psalmist, my ways are not your ways. My thoughts are not your thoughts. So what can we say about this good criminal? We don't know what he did in his early life. We don't know the bad and evil things he did that got him the title criminal. But what we know for sure is the most important thing he would ever do in his life, he stole